All right, welcome back, everybody. Another edition live from Drew's house. Hope you're all doing okay out there. Kicking off another week. Great guests lined up, all that good stuff. Hope you enjoyed last week. We had a fun couple of music shows, and it was just good. Club Passim, it was great to get to talk with Matt Smith of Club Passim. We enjoyed that very much. Talked about the what they're doing virtually to get through these tough times. And kind of a similar theme today, as it is that time of year, folks. It is the 2020 Newburyport Documentary Film Festival. In this year, as everything in 2020, it is a lot different, as you can imagine. A lot of virtual aspects to this. I'm going to have a couple guests on the show today. Joanne Morris, who's been on the show before, friend of the show. She puts this whole thing together and all that good stuff. But we also have a bit of a local angle to the Newburyport Documentary Film Festival this year. Actually, one of Newburyport's own is going to join us as well. Jessie Adler is going to join us here in just a moment as well. So excited about that. All right, so the 2020 Newburyport Documentary Film Festival. Again, Joanne Morris. Joanne, why don't you wave here since we got a couple of guests. There you go. There's Joanne and Jessie Adler of Newburyport. Hi, Jessie.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Jessie, are you outside?
Yes, I'm in York, Maine.
Oh, in York, Maine. Very nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound fine.
Okay, great.
Very good. All right, Joanne, let's start with you because we've talked many times in the past this time of year when this comes around, but I can imagine the Documentary Film Festival is a lot different in a pandemic. Am I right?
It is. We're actually lucky that our festival was in September because a lot of festivals started to go virtual in March very unexpectedly and didn't have a lot of time to prepare. But we did have the luxury of seeing it coming and by June figuring it was going to be virtual. And we've been speaking with a lot of festivals and they've all been really cooperative and helpful as we all reinvent the wheel. So our festival is virtual. What that means is you buy a ticket or a pass. Our dates are the 18th to the 24th, but you can watch the film or films anytime in that time period, 2 in the morning, 3:30, whenever it's convenient, you watch from your home. And for most people, they could even put it onto their TV monitor, but we have to have a technical FAQ for that.
Okay, why don't I'll let you introduce Jessie a little bit here because you know her, I do not, but tell us a little bit about the lineup this year and what people can expect.
So this year we have 16 features and shorts, and the shorts are in 3 different blocks. So basically, if you buy a ticket to a block, you see anywhere from 2 to 4 films based on the length. And after each screening, we will have a live Q&A with the filmmaker. So that's the live part of the festival. We wanted to retain at least some part of that. And so we'll be bringing in all the filmmakers. In fact, all of them are joining this year, which has never happened because they're joining us virtually. But so we did meet Jessie in the submission process. Her film came in, it's fabulous. And then we find out she's a Newburyport resident. She was born and raised here, which just adds a really nice twist to it. So I'm going to introduce Jessie now, and she knows more she can share with us.
Hi, Jessie.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. First time on the show. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your documentary and how did this all come about?
Sure. So as Joanne said, I was born and raised in Newbury, Massachusetts, grew up on Rolfs Lane. And so I don't think the festival was there when I was growing up, but the firehouse was just kind of coming into fruition into the art center that it is today. And I remember watching films at the screening room, and so I was just really excited to see the documentary film festival that's here and all the ways that it's bringing new stories to Newburyport. So this film was my thesis film from grad school. I went to the School of Visual Arts in New York. They have a really great MFA program in social documentary filmmaking. And so prior to that, I was working with a human and environmental rights advocacy group called Earth Rights International, and working with mostly Indigenous and ethnic minority communities in the Mekong and Amazon regions. And so I knew in grad school that I wanted to focus on Native women's perspectives. And I had spent a little bit of time at Standing Rock and kept some connections there. And I had just heard about Shaona's story through someone I met there, Ursula Aldridge Young Bear. And yeah, I reached out to Shaona and she told me a bit about the boxing team. And I thought it would be a great way to see some positive work that's being done in her community, and also discuss some of the challenges that her community are facing.
Okay, very interesting. So that's the background. Well, let's start from the beginning. What made you know you wanted to be a documentary filmmaker? Because it's kind of an unusual line of work that not everybody gets to experience.
Yeah, well, it was definitely not something I had thought about until, the past, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years. I studied fine art photography in undergraduate. I went to SUNY Purchase in upstate New York, and or Westchester County, New York. And yeah, so it was a fine art school. Wasn't really focused on careers. It was about creating art. And so I had very little concept of what I was really going to, how I was going to make a living or what my career was going to look like. And it was a long time ago, and it was all film. So when we got out of school, when I graduated in 2007, I bought a DSLR and traveled around for a few months taking pictures and tried to figure out this new thing called digital. I had some really incredible adventures, shot the whole thing in JPEGs because I had no idea what I was doing. And if anyone watching is familiar with photography, they know that was a little bit of a heartbreak for me when I figured it out. And then I got an internship at a photo studio called Milk Studios in New York. And that brought me down a path of photo assisting and digital teching, but mostly in the fashion photo world, which was not something I was necessarily interested in. And so I just found this job online with Earthrights, and they required photo and video. So I started to learn more about video through my work with them, and really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed the greater collaboration, I think, that's required both between the filmmaker and the people they're making films about or with, and also with the other parts of the creative team. So sound person, producer, cinematographer, I really like the team element of it.
So your title is a visual storyteller, is how it's written here in the in the program of the Newburyport Documentary Film Fest. There was an aspect of kind of learning on the fly a lot of this stuff, because you came out of college and said I'm going to learn about this, and obviously you had a natural ability to shoot the right shots and all that, but there was an element of kind of learning on the fly, huh?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the time that I spent at Earthrights was really a very formative experience for me, because it gave me a specific purpose. I understood what the work was supposed to do, and I understood why we were creating it and what the story was. But they also, I was working with lawyers and educators and advocates. And so they were it was the first time that they had a storyteller on team, or really anyone. They have a communications department, but anyone who was just creating material for them. So they were so excited about anything we created. And so it was a very supported adventure for me, and a really nice way to, start experimenting with a different medium and just feel very nurtured throughout the process.
And let's get back to the film you're up for here. Say the title again for me.
It's The Boxers of Brule.
So this is not a light subject, obviously. This is some of them are, I think, Joanne, if I remember correctly, there's some lighthearted stuff. This is not one of them. You explained, you got into it a little bit here earlier, but do you tell us a little bit about the backstory that you haven't already touched on? Because there's it's kind of, there's just the first paragraph, the preview of this is wow, there's a lot to it.
Yeah. Yeah, so the story is about Sheona, whose birthday it is today, actually.
Oh, happy birthday.
Sheona lost one of her best friend, her cousin, by Lakota culture, it's her sister, to suicide in January 2017. And in response to that, she created a girls' boxing team to empower the young girls of the tribe. And give them a positive outlet for some of the traumas that they faced, for the difficulties that they're facing on a day-to-day basis. So this is happening in Lower Brule, South Dakota, the Lower Brule Sioux tribe. In Lakota, they speak Lakota, it's a Lakota tribe. Their tribal name is Kuichasa Oyate. And so, we, in the story, we see some of the challenges that they're facing. The first of which was a youth suicide, which is an ongoing problem in a lot of Indigenous communities in the U.S. and really throughout the world. And so this was her response to try to create something positive and counter that. So the film is heavy. It deals with that. It deals with addiction and depression, and just dealing with the sort of trauma that they're experiencing, and trying to find ways to manage that and to cope, and to go beyond coping, but to really live the lives that they want to live and figure out who they are and their place in the world. But despite all of those very heavy topics, the thing that was really striking to me while I was there was just how lighthearted, or just what a great sense of humor all of these girls have. And really, most people that I met there really just were funny and witty, and just so strong, I guess, because of all of the challenges that they've faced. That's how they are rolling with it. They're not wallowing in it. And the girls on the team, when we started, were like 11 to 14. So they're also being silly 12-year-old girls.
Wow.
That kind of balances out.
So how much time did you actually spend with the Boxers of Brule?
Well, this was my thesis project, so I was going back and forth between New York and South Dakota. But I went out first for a few days to do kind of a scout and get to know everyone and see if this was something we all wanted to do. And then I spent 6 weeks filming with them, and then went back, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 other times for 2 weeks to 10 days at a time.
And and this is a legit, like, people are probably trying to get their heads around, who haven't seen your film, about what this actually is. I mean, it's a legit boxing club. And we've heard so many stories about how boxing is, people think of it as this, violent, combative thing, but it's really, for a lot of people, there's a lot of structure to it and a lot of discipline, and it really has helped a lot of people deal with whatever. But tell us a little bit about the actual club. How many people are we talking? What's it like? Just give us that kind of visual.
Yeah, well, to be honest, the structure of the club was something that they challenged with, because there was not necessarily, a space for them to practice. There was not equipment for them to use. The communication is very difficult, just in terms of, a lot of the girls on the team don't have phones or access to Wi-Fi at home, and so when there's no communication for like practices and things like that, so the infrastructure makes the whole thing very difficult. So it was kind of haphazard, and they definitely did their best. And they loved, like you were saying, it did give them so much power to be able to use their bodies in a way that had impact. But I think with this team, the other elements of the boxing team that were at least as important as the boxing were, learning about their culture from Sheona. They were learning prayers and traditions, and what herbs and berries meant what for their culture. And I think they found a lot of power in that. as well as the sisterhood of the team, and just being there, you know, having slumber parties and bonfires and sing-alongs, and just being there for each other in a way that was not necessarily created for them outside of that.
Again, Jessie Adler here. The Boxers of Brule is her documentary film. You know, I can pretty much, I'd bet my life on it that you don't get into this. You're not in it for the awards. But when they started coming, because Tribeca recognized you, Big Sky Film, now your hometown here of Newburyport. When that stuff started happening, did it catch you off guard? I mean, did you know what you had done was good work like this, or was this a surprise?
I knew that these girls were incredible. Like, they are incredible, and their stories are really important to hear. And so, yeah, I mean, throughout the process of just being there and creating this work with them, like, I felt it was very powerful. I mean, awards are not, it wasn't part of the thinking, you know, it wasn't part of the mental process at any point. And we've, you know, we're still a long way from being, we have some more awards to win before we can really start bragging. But it's been, I mean, the great thing is that audiences of all kinds from all over are really responding to their story. You know, we were showing this film in New York City high schools last November through the Tribeca educational screening series. So these are, I mean, we were in the Bronx, in the poorest congressional district in the States, with kids who have never been outside of New York City, let alone to an indigenous reservation halfway across the country. And a lot of them weren't even aware that Native Americans are still existing, living in New York City and throughout the country. But they still really resonated with the experience of the girls. So I think that was what was important for us, was to just make sure that their experiences are being seen in a way that people can relate to and can find some power within their successes, you know, within themselves, and then also build the support and understanding for Indigenous women.
You know, I think one of the things that's so powerful about documentary films, and so many times it's like your introduction to a topic, like it's something that maybe you don't know very much about. And you say, okay, you know what, I'm going to start there and let's go in that direction. What do you think it is about your film that is, you know, the common person who just sits down for the first time with an open mind? What do you think it is that's so striking to them, that grabs their attention and just doesn't let them forget about it for a while? What is it about this film?
Well, I think it's the beauty of the place. I mean, Lower Brule is a beautiful, I mean, it's like rolling plateaus, and the Missouri River goes through, and the light there is just incredible. It's like everything's washed in gold all the time. Mm-hmm. So it's a beautiful place. And I think that, you know, for visual storytelling, I think that's very important. But I think also the girls in Shayona, the way that they, you know, what they're going through is just a very basic human experience. You know, we've all experienced loss, and the way that we respond to it, you know, does dictate what our future looks like. And they're all also trying to figure out who they are and what their place is in the world. And that's, you know, and deciding whether or not, you know, are you good? Are you bad? If you're struggling with this addiction, does that define you? Or does that mean that you can also do something positive and bring yourself out of it? So I think the internal struggle that Shayona especially goes through is something that I was very, you know, I felt like I could definitely relate to. And I feel like that's a very, you know, common experience for audience members.
And, you know, you were welcomed in to this group of boxers. I wonder, do you have to kind of stand back a little bit and just watch from afar? And then, I mean, there must be part of you that says eventually, like, you know, I'm close with these people now. They've let me into this circle. But as a filmmaker, do you sometimes just have to step back and not be a part of it? How do you balance that?
I don't know. Still working on that. It's a really complicated relationship because there's so many power dynamics. And they shift constantly throughout the process. You know, like if you're wanting to create a story, you're reliant on this person to help you. It's their story, so they have the power. And then throughout the process, you get some of the power because they're trusting you to tell their story correctly. And so it is a strange back and forth, but throughout all of that, you're sharing such intimate moments that there's no way you can, other people are maybe better at it. And I think in more like investigative journalistic stories, it's much easier. But when it's so personal and someone's really sharing their most intimate experiences with you, there's no way to really draw the line,
Go back to Joanne Morris here for 1 second. Joanne, I think one of the questions I always end up asking you whenever you've come on and gotten me ready for the Newburyport Documentary Film Festival is what jumped out at you about certain films. I'm always curious about kind of being in that room. And it's obviously a hard process. I'm sure there's some really good ones that you had to leave on the table. But what jumped out at you about Jessie's film that everybody said, that's one we got to have?
I really think it was the girls. I think it was just this intimate personal story. And the way it was told was not, a lot of voiceover narration, which is fine in some films, but this one was just, they were just on screen and, and they were very natural. It was very impressive because I think it would be so hard to be natural with a camera crew surrounding you at all times, but you felt them very genuine and authentic and you just made a connection with them. And I just was so impressed by their maturity, dealing with such difficulties, in their day-to-day lives. So we were very moved by it.
And Jessie, were there moments of, I'm sure that never gets old to hear, right?
Yeah, well, and I feel the same way about those girls. They're really just incredible and they keep me going throughout the difficult moments of this process. And so I'm thrilled to hear when other people feel the same way.
Was it draining at all in moments? Because like I said, these are people that and girls that have not had the easiest of upbringings and some tough stories. Was it draining at all? Was there ever moments where you caught yourself and you were like, okay, probably need a break here or whatever?
Yeah, definitely there were a lot of those. I think one of the most challenging things, just experiencing what they have to experience on a daily basis was difficult at some points. But also, like you were saying before, the relationship between myself and them, and especially as this being my first like independent venture and me being responsible for how this all goes down, it was just really anxiety producing, like what is my responsibility to them? How do I intervene in a moment where they are struggling with something? And is that changing the story? Am I then being deceitful in storytelling? Is my loyalty to the audience and the so-called truth, or is it to them as their friend in this moment? And I think there are a lot of, there's no right answer there. And I think I made a lot of mistakes that I think will help me grow as a filmmaker and as a person. But, when those moments arise, it's really hard to just say, well, okay, it's very, you have to take some time and reflect on it. And it's difficult.
Did you get any feedback from any of the girls yet about, you did it justice, or did you get any anger? I don't know. Where did the reaction from that inner circle been?
Yeah. Well, they've seen cuts throughout the process. So they saw it before I graduated and screened it at the thesis film screening. And they would give me feedback all throughout, and they were mostly happy with it. The one criticism that I got, there's a scene at the end where we're at a funeral and there's someone falls down, and I took that out because it made audience members very uncomfortable. Like it's a very difficult moment, and then all of a sudden everybody's laughing and the audience doesn't know what to do with it. So I took that out, and when I showed it to the family, you know, it was Shayona's uncle that fell down, and when I showed it to the family, Shayona's grandmother was like, "Where was Leroy falling? You have to put that back in." That was one of their favorite moments, which surprised me, but you know, it was important for them to share the humor, I think, as well.
You can probably live with that criticism, I think, right?
Yeah, sure. More laughter is great.
Go ahead, Joanne.
I was saying, no, I do. I love that scene. You felt a little odd. You're like, why would I giggle at a funeral? But there were a few other moments in the film as well you needed that lightheartedness, and it was there. There was a little kitten, I guess they found, and they were trying to feed it and had no milk, and they were warming up water and asking other girls, "Do you have any milk?" And it helped with the overall, because I'm sure it isn't all, you know, sadness, and so it was really important to have those, and I think it really added to the film.
Yeah. Well, and I think it helps give you a moment to breathe, but then it also, if you're not very familiar with that experience and needing that humor so much, I think as an outsider, it kind of makes the challenges that they're facing even more poignant, because just the contrast. You know, the fact that they are needing this humor means that much more about the heartache that they're suffering right now.
Yeah.
And Drew, we actually did a interview with Jessie and a few of the girls the other day just for the film festival, and one of the girls has now moved away an hour and a half away. She's going to high school and living with an aunt, and she brought up an interesting point. She said, like, from her perspective, she felt she needed to leave the reservation, and that's just something I wonder about.
I lost you there, Joanne. You still with me? Sorry. Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Keep going. I lost the last 5 seconds.
Oh, yeah. I was just saying, it just to me brought up the question: do reservations work, and do they need to leave to maybe have a better future? I mean, I was just taken by that. Like that much, all the things they go through, including, where do I decide to live? At such a young age, they have to think about this. It's just really touching.
It is fascinating.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead, Jessie. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's a really complicated question. I think it's true of any communities. You know, even in New York City, pockets where there are, you know, lower income neighborhoods. If the goal is to get out, is that neighborhood ever going to improve? Is that community ever going to flourish the way that it potentially could? And so I think there's a process of development that needs to happen, you know, with people going out and making use of the resources that are available outside and then putting it back into the community. Sorry, a truck is passing.
It happens. This is how we do shows in 2020.
So it's complicated, and I mean, and especially with Native American reservations, their land is crucial. I mean, there is so much connection to the land. So the fact that we have forced them into this place and asked them already in history to disconnect with the land that means so much to them, and now they've reconnected with this land, and this is where their family is. This is where, you know, potentially the language of their tribe is spoken, and their ancestors are buried. You know, that place has a lot of meaning for their identity. And so to go outside really removes them from that. And Joanne, you know about that with your own family history in terms of removing someone from a culture and trying to place them somewhere else.
Drew, I had mentioned to Jessie, my grandmother actually is a full-blooded Mohawk Indian, grew up on a reservation in Montreal. But as a young girl, 5 or 6, she and her brother were sent, they used to have this school called the Carlisle School in Pennsylvania, and they were sent there to forget their culture, and they were learning English, while mostly everyone else stayed behind. And to this day, I don't know why they were chosen. I don't know what happened. So we have lots of relatives on this reservation, and we've gone every couple of years. As a young child, we used to go every year to the powwow, and they all stay there, and they live in different circumstances. And growing up, I just couldn't understand why they wanted to stay, but now, you know, it must be really strong ties as well. And so it was very interesting to see it going on in your film.
I think, and I won't derail this from the film too much. I do want to touch on one thing, and this is for both of you now, since I know that story. There's been so much talk. I mean, this over the last year, there's been a million huge stories over the past 6 to 10 months, but this whole idea of all the logos and the mascots that are so much part of the high schools and the college teams, the pro teams. The Washington Redskins no longer are the Washington Redskins. And I had a professor on this show about a month ago who said, really, just every one of them we should just be done away with. Everyone, it's a racial slur. We don't allow other racial slurs, and that's what they are. I don't know why we here in America think that this is okay. I'm just curious real quickly on your take, because it is still a news item. I know my wife is teaching at a school right now, and their mascot is the Sachems. There's a million of them around. Just your take on that. I don't think that comes up in your film, Jessie, but maybe there's a connection there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the lack of visibility that Indigenous people have in our country, and when we are so unaware of what their culture is, what their history is. That's our history too. We share that history, and when we have it's so convoluted now, and we've obscured the truth behind it, and then oppressed those groups of people, then to take one simple thing that's easy and entertaining for us to enjoy is not it's not fair, and it just simplifies everything. It reduces them to a logo, to a mascot, to something that we can enjoy while they are suffering because of the actions that we've taken. But I think, really the bottom line is, and that's not to say, there is controversy within Indigenous communities as well about that. It's not a quite as black and white as maybe we would think. But I think that the bottom line is, if someone is telling you something is painful for them, we just listen and respond to that. It's not up to us to decide, no, oh no, it's not, no, it shouldn't be. If they're telling us it's painful, then we need to respond in a way that alleviates that pain.
Joanne, anything you'd like to add to that, since you just told us that other story?
It is interesting. I'm on a group with my cousins, and there's a little bit of talk on that, but it is mixed. The most recent one was the Land O'Lakes butter, and there's this beautiful portrayal of a Native American woman. So it's not, I know there's some that are more negative, maybe with the hatchet or whatever. But anyway, I don't think it's black and white. I think people have mixed feelings. They don't want to erase them all over the place as well, so then there's nothing left. So it is very complicated.
Interesting. I just wanted to touch on that because it is still a news story. It seems like those things, that topic keeps coming up, it seems, every few weeks with some school here or there. But back to the film. So The Boxers of Brule, again, Jessie Adler, this is her film. It's part of the 2020 Newburyport Documentary Film Festival, which Joanne Morris here has put together for many years. Jessie, must have been pretty cool to get the honor from your hometown. You were like, all right, finally, Newburyport, here we go.
Yeah, it was great. And I think this is the festival that I was most disappointed got canceled in person, because it just would have been great to celebrate with some friends and family from Newbury and Newburyport who have been so supportive of the process throughout the whole project. And, we tried to coordinate some travel for the girls whenever they can join the festival. We're trying to organize that. So this was one that I was hoping, it would be fun for them to see my hometown. And but there's always next year, so we'll try for that. But either way, it is really a pleasure to just be sharing this with people locally.
Just a delay.
Well, we'd love for you to come back anyway. Oh, sorry, Drew. We would love to have Jessie and maybe some of the girls come. We're trying to think internally. Obviously, we have this year's festival, but how can we do a little bit and bring some people back over the year, next year? So
we'll just make a sequel.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, very good. We're all set up for next year. Just a delayed celebration too. You can still celebrate with anybody. Just actually, how is COVID testing within the boxing club? Because that must be kind of something that you were curious about. How's everybody doing?
Lower Brule has been able to keep their infection rate very low. There were a few cases. I don't think there was anyone, I don't think they lost anyone directly to COVID, but there were a few cases, and it was scary, especially, you know, with lack of resources to adequate health care and like preventative measures. It's scary. And so the tribe set up a like a checkpoint, and they were not allowing visitors in. You know, there's a casino there, and there's a lot of fishing and hunting that outsiders come in for, but that they closed that down. And a lot of other reservations did throughout the country, and some of them, especially in South Dakota, I think South Dakota state government was trying to sue a tribe, you know, so there was a lot of controversy and difficulty for them just to try to take care, you know, protect themselves. And I don't know if you were seeing coverage of Navajo Nation, but they got hit really hard. And that was I think it was like New York City and Navajo Nation were neck and neck for a really long time for like leading cases of COVID. Because there just was not the resources were not available to help slow down the infection rate, and then to cure cases when it actually came. I think there was something. I think in the Pacific Northwest there was a tribe who had been really like continued to ask for the ventilators and the equipment that they needed to treat people, and they never got them. And then eventually they just got a bunch of, this is so dark, but they were sent body bags. And I think it was a mistake, but that was the only resource or the only supplies that they were actually given from the federal government. So
the boxing club has continued on though. They're at least in their own way. It's really on their own. I mean, I'm not sure if matches are happening at this point. But Sheona is no longer really participating. She's still struggling with her own mental health and addiction and really having a hard time. And so the girls have been kind of left to their own devices, but a lot of them are getting more into basketball, and the school and the community have set up other suicide prevention groups, like trainings and creating kind of suicide prevention peer advocates. And so they're taking action in other ways, but the boxing itself is not something that they're carrying on with right now. Understood. And Jessie Adler, I think my last question for you, again, her film is The Boxers of Brule. Check it out. It is part of the Newburyport Documentary Film Festival this year, which is being done virtually. Get your passes for that. Lastly, I would ask, what is the thing that you'll never forget about making this film? What left the biggest impact? And I guess two-part question, what do you hope people take out of it that are watching it for the first time?
I hope that people become aware first of what some of our Indigenous communities are facing within the country, and just take the initiative to educate themselves more about, even within their own communities, who are the Indigenous tribes that have lived on their land, what is the history of their land, who it is still, I mean, there are tribes in Massachusetts that are, that people in Newburyport can educate themselves on, and just make sure that we're being supportive of their of their struggle, and also just respectful of their experience and tradition, and supporting however they're requesting. And also, I guess more specifically in terms of supporting the mental health processes, I hope that that people, that we can improve the mental health system, especially when it comes to treating people from different cultures, so that we're sensitive, we're viewing things through a lens of cultural sensitivity. Because right now, Shayona, as I mentioned before, is really still struggling with her own mental health, depression and addiction. And the treatment that she's getting is all through a Western science lens, which doesn't apply. It doesn't help her. It doesn't apply. She doesn't have a chemical imbalance. She has trauma that she needs to unpack, and she has, been disconnected from her cultural roots. And so my experience with her has been seeing when she is able to connect with her traditions, that is what's healing. And so to create more nuance within conversations of mental health treatment, I think, I'm really hoping that that's part of the conversation that we help further.
I take it that's a person that you're never going to forget throughout your life.
Absolutely not. I don't think she will let me, even if I wanted to, but I don't want to.
You get, and I'm just, sorry, I promise I lie all the time about last questions. It's kind of becoming part of my shtick. But once you start getting these awards, I know people get curious and more people go to see these things. I just wonder, on like a personal level, have you got like big feedback? Has somebody like out of the blue called you and said, that was unbelievable, thank you so much? Does Scorsese call you and say, great work, who are you?
He hasn't yet.
You're waiting on you're waiting.
Yeah. Feel free to give him my number, that's fine.
Yes, put it on the screen.
Well, I think just receiving the Tribeca grant to make the film, and then getting into the Tribeca Festival, and yeah, there's a potential distributor now who's interested, who is a pleasantly reputable media out. It was a pleasant surprise for me. But I think what that's done is forced me to take myself more seriously. I knowing that I can create I'm a filmmaker now. I have to do this. I can't just be playing around and taking shots of things that look pretty. Like this, I need to get to work now.
And your next project, any ideas?
I have some ideas. They're all in very initial stages, so I won't go into too much detail. But one thing I do know is that I will be doing an artist residency in Corsicana, Texas for the next, from October to December, and doing some short films there, again, focusing on mental health issues and different approaches to healing mental health.
All right. Well, Jessie Adler, Newburyport's own. You're in York right now. Is that where do you live there in York, or? No,
I live in New York, in Brooklyn. A friend of mine was traveling up the coast to New England, and I figured it would be a nice opportunity to get to the ocean, so I joined her yesterday. So we'll be passing through Newburyport tomorrow. Sounds good. All right. Well, Jessie Adler, the Boxers of Brule, congratulations on all the success so far. Continued more success with it. And Joanne Morris, always a great event here. It's one of our favorite things to talk about here on this show. And it's a little different this year, I know, in a pandemic and virtually, but all the best here as you put together the 2020 Newburyport Documentary Film Festival. Great. Thank you so much, Drew. It's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot. It was nice to talk with you. All right. Thank you both. Be safe. All right. Take care. All right. How about that? Jessie Adler, a very impressive filmmaker. Still makes her smile saying that. The Boxers of Brule is the film. And it's one that I'm definitely going to see now. It's one of those films that documentary films, sometimes they just sneak up on you. And Joanne, I've known Joanne for a long time. She's been on the show many times. And she told me, you just got to have her on. You'll like her. And now we'll go watch the film all together and see The Boxers of Brule. Go check it out. Jessie Adler, local filmmaker, and obviously a very cool person to come on the show. So worth supporting.
go check that out. And Joanne Morris, thank you very much. Go get your passes for the 2020 Newburyport Documentary Film Festival. It's going on right now. Always cool. It's not just the fact that you get access to these films. You also get access to the filmmakers like I just did. But you can ask them your own questions and just have these conversations. And there's always surprises. So get on board with that. Do it virtually this year and then hopefully back in person next year, because that's even better when you can go in and talk with these people and have a drink with them individually. That's always a cool moment as well. So best of luck to the 2020 Newburyport Documentary Film Festival, and best of luck to Jessie Adler. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Drew Mohlland, live from Drew's house, another edition. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.